I gave my parents $10,200 to help them celebrate their 30th wedding anniversary. They told me they couldn't afford a big party, and I wanted to do something kind for them. I thought it would be a special night for all of us. I sent the money to my mum so she could pay for the venue, food, and decorations. She thanked me and said everything was taken care of. On the night of the party, I got dressed up and arrived early, excited to see how it all turned out. The place looked beautiful, and people were already arriving. I went to check in at the entrance, but the woman holding the guest list looked confused. She couldn't find my name. I thought maybe it was a small mistake, so I walked in anyway. As I stepped inside, one of the caterers stopped me and handed me a tray of food. She said, "We're short-staffed. Can you help pass these around?" Before I could explain that I wasn't part of the staff, my mum walked by. She saw me holding the tray and just smiled. She didn't say anything to correct the mistake. I stood there in shock. Was this really happening? I paid for this party. I was the reason this whole event was possible, and yet not one person greeted me like a guest. No one even seemed to know I was part of the family. I walked around slowly, hoping someone would say, "Oh, there you are," or ask me to join them, but it didn't happen. My parents were laughing, talking with friends, enjoying the night. I felt like a stranger in a room full of people I grew up around. It was clear they had planned it this way. The worst part was knowing my mum saw what was happening and chose not to fix it. She let them think I was staff. She didn't care. I wasn't even mentioned during the toasts or speeches. No one said thank you. No one said my name. That night, I realized something I didn't want to believe before. My parents didn't see me as part of the celebration. They used me, and they didn't even feel bad about it. I held the tray in my hands, my arms starting to ache, but I didn't know what else to do. I still believed maybe there was a mistake, or something would be explained soon. Maybe my mum didn't recognize me at first. Maybe she was just distracted. I kept walking through the crowd, offering appetizers to people who barely looked at me. Some smiled politely, others acted like I wasn't even there. Then I heard it. My mum was talking to someone nearby, laughing softly, and she said, "She's always been better in the background anyway." I froze. I didn't even need to hear my name to know she was talking about me. Her voice had that familiar tone, casual, dismissive, like I was just a small detail in her big evening. My chest tightened, and I felt my hands shaking. I wanted to turn around and say something, but the words stuck in my throat. I just stood there, still holding the tray, my heart sinking. I looked around the room. It was full of people I hadn't seen in years. Distant cousins, old co-workers of my parents, neighbors, and even friends I thought they'd lost touch with. And there was my brother, the one who stole from our parents and disappeared. He was laughing with our uncle, being treated like the guest of honor. During my dad's little speech, he even said, "We're so proud to have our son here tonight," but not one mention of me. No one said thank you for helping or for making the night possible. They gave toasts and speeches, and even played a slideshow full of family photos. Most of them didn't include me. When I was in one, I was easy to miss, off to the side or in the background. I looked at the guests again and noticed how everyone else seemed to match the party's theme, coordinated, polished, like they were all in on something I wasn't told about. People kept giving me looks, confused, judgmental, like they were wondering why I was even there. I pulled out my phone and texted my mom. "Why am I not on the guest list? Why did you let them treat me like staff?" She read the message. No reply. I passed by my dad later, standing with a group of his friends. They were talking and laughing. Then he said it. "Yeah, Jenna couldn't make it tonight. She's working late again." I stopped breathing for a second. I was standing 5 feet away, and he acted like I wasn't even in the room. I walked slowly to the back, set the tray down on a side table, and left without saying a word. I left the party halfway through, humiliated and silent. No one stopped me. No one even noticed I was leaving. As I walked out, one of my cousins, someone I barely speak to, called after me and handed me a small plastic container with leftover cake. "You probably didn't get a slice," she said, like she was doing me a favor. I thanked her quietly, though the lump in my throat made it hard to speak. I didn't cry, not yet. I just walked to my car and drove home in silence. That night, I sat on my bed with the container of cake in my lap and started scrolling through Instagram. My parents had already posted pictures, smiling with relatives, dancing, holding hands in front of the cake I paid for. I wasn't in any of the photos. Then I noticed something worse. In one of the group shots, I could see a bit of my shoulder. I had been in the original picture. They had cropped me out. Post after post showed the same thing. My brother, who barely talks to them unless he needs something, was in almost every photo. There were hashtags like #family first and #blessed. All I could do was stare. I kept scrolling, but I couldn't stop my mind from going further back, to birthdays where my parents forgot to get me a cake, to school events they skipped, to how they paid for my brother's college, but told me to figure it out on my own. I remembered when he crashed my car and they made me apologize to him for being upset. This wasn't new. I just hadn't wanted to believe it. I looked around my apartment at all the things I had worked hard for. No one helped me. No one believed in me the way they always believed in him. And still, I gave them over $10,000, hoping for one night of feeling appreciated. Instead, they made me feel like I didn't belong in my own family. That's when it hit me. This wasn't just about one party. This was about every time they overlooked me, every time they treated me like an afterthought. I let them. I gave and gave, hoping they'd see me differently. They never did. So fine. They want a daughter who stays in the background. They can have that. I'll vanish. Not out of sadness, but out of choice. But before I disappear, I'll make sure they know exactly what they lost. I didn't want revenge. I wanted peace. But peace comes when people stop hurting you, and they weren't going to stop on their own. I didn't plan it all that night, but the seed was planted. They used me, and I let them. That part was over now. The next morning, I woke up with a pit in my stomach, but instead of crying or replaying the night over and over, I opened my laptop. I still had the receipts, the contracts, the emails. Everything had been set up in my name. The only reason that party even happened was because I paid for it, and they had the nerve to treat me like I was nothing. I started with the cake. The final payment hadn't gone through yet, so I called the bakery and cancelled the check. Next was the photographer. Same story. I stopped the payment. Both contracts had been signed under my name, and I made it clear the services weren't delivered properly. They didn't argue much. I think they were just confused. That made it easier. Then I contacted the venue. I explained that the person who booked the space, me, had been misrepresented. I told them I hadn't even been on the guest list. I wasn't rude, just direct. I also mentioned I had been overcharged for certain services that weren't included in the final delivery. The manager promised to look into it. That was enough for now. After that, I sat back and took a deep breath. I could have stopped there, but something in me said, no, let them feel it. So I made a new Reddit account, then a TikTok. I didn't use my name. I didn't show my face, but I posted the story, how I paid over $10,000 for my parents' anniversary party and was treated like a waitress. I blurred the photos just enough to hide identities, but keep the emotion. A tray in my hands, a group shot I was cropped out of, a screenshot of a read message my mum never replied to. I thought a few people might see it, maybe leave some comments. Instead, it blew up fast. Thousands of comments poured in. People were furious. This is heartbreaking. You're better off without them. They don't deserve you. Some shared similar stories. Others just wanted to give me support. Strangers gave me more kindness in a few hours than my family had in years. It wasn't just a post anymore. It was proof that I wasn't crazy. I wasn't overreacting. What they did was wrong. And now, the world knew. It didn't take long for the fallout to begin. Within a few days of my post going viral, my parents started getting phone calls. Friends, co-workers, even church people they'd known for years were suddenly confused and asking questions. They had all seen the post. Some guessed it was about them. Others just pieced it together from the details. My parents had worked hard to build a perfect image. Proud, loving parents, always giving, always united. Now that image was cracking in public. Then came the vendors. Since I had cancelled the remaining payments, the photographer reached out to my parents directly, asking who was going to cover the balance. Same with the bakery. When no one responded clearly, they threatened to pull their services. The video guy didn't even wait. He cancelled the final delivery altogether. My parents had planned to show the anniversary video to everyone. Now, they wouldn't even get it. That's when my brother messaged me. It was short. Grow up. You don't air family stuff online. You're embarrassing all of us. I stared at the message for a while. Then I replied with a full list of what he'd taken from me over the years. The camera he'd borrowed and sold. The money I'd loaned him that he never paid back. Even the necklace that went missing when he crashed on my couch. I included photos, screenshots, and bank transfers. Receipts. No anger. Just facts. He never replied. Then my mum called. At first, I thought maybe, just maybe, She was going to say sorry, but I should have known better. Her voice was tight, cold, and full of anger. "How could you do this to us?" she said. "You've ruined everything we've built. You humiliated us in front of our friends. Over what? A misunderstanding." I stayed calm. I'd already set my phone to record before picking up. She didn't know that, of course, but I wanted proof, not for the internet, for myself, so I'd never doubt again what really happened. She didn't apologize once, just blamed me over and over. And as I listened, I realized they weren't angry because they were hurt. They were angry because people saw the truth. Their perfect little story was shattered, and I didn't even have to lie. I posted the audio. I blurred names and filtered the voice slightly, but the message was clear. My mother's tone was cold, defensive, and angry. She never once said she was sorry. She never asked how I felt. All she did was complain about how I made them look bad, how I destroyed everything, and how I should have kept my mouth shut. And now the world could hear it for themselves. The response was immediate. People who had doubted before were stunned. Strangers flooded the comments with support, saying the call confirmed what I had shared. I didn't feel proud. I felt relieved. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't overreacting. It had really happened, and I wasn't the only one who saw it now. Then something unexpected happened. My aunt, my mum's younger sister, messaged me privately. We hadn't talked in years. She said she saw the post and the audio, and she believed me. She said she'd always noticed how I was treated, but didn't know how to say anything back then. "You were always so quiet," she wrote. "I wish I had spoken up." We started talking more, and little by little, more of the past came into focus. My aunt told me that when I was a teenager, my parents opened a college fund for my brother. She remembered because she was there when it was set up. They never opened one for me. I had to work 2 jobs just to afford community college. No one told me there had been money, just not for me. She reminded me about my brother's graduation party, the one my parents spent thousands on. Decorations, catering, music. He didn't even finish his degree, dropped out just before completing it, but they celebrated like he had earned a PhD. Meanwhile, when I graduated, they barely showed up. No party, not even dinner, just a quick hug and a well done. I started remembering more. My childhood piano lessons that were cancelled because he needed sports gear. How my birthday once got skipped because he was having a hard week. All the little moments I had brushed off suddenly stacked into something undeniable. They had a favourite, and it wasn't me. It wasn't just about love. It was about control. They praised him no matter what he did, even when it was wrong. But with me, success felt like a threat. If I did better, it made him look worse, and they couldn't allow that. They didn't want me to succeed. Not really. Not if it meant standing taller than him. And now that I was finally standing on my own, they hated it. But this time, I wasn't backing down. It started slowly at first. A few bigger creators stitched my TikTok, then some commentary channels picked it up. By the end of the week, my story was everywhere. People were calling it the party betrayal, and the post had gone so viral, even news outlets started DMing me. A journalist from an online magazine asked if I'd be open to sharing more details. I didn't respond right away. I needed time to think. I hadn't expected it to blow up like this. What surprised me the most was how my job reacted. One day, my boss pulled me aside after a team meeting and said, "Hey, I saw your story. I just want to say, I think what you did was brave." I froze, not knowing what to expect next. But then she smiled and added, "We've always known you're capable and professional. What your family did doesn't change that. We've got your back." I don't think I've ever felt so seen in a workplace before. Then came the emails, companies offering to collaborate. A skincare brand wanted to sponsor a post on self-love after betrayal. Another was a budgeting app interested in featuring me in a campaign about financial independence and setting boundaries. I hadn't planned for any of this, but it felt like the universe was flipping the story around. They tried to make me small, and now I had more eyes on me than ever. Meanwhile, my family was spiraling. Once the backlash reached their circle, my parents started doing damage control. I got messages from old neighbours, distant cousins, even my mum's church friends. Most just asked what really happened. Some said they were so sorry I felt that way. Those were the ones I didn't even bother replying to. I blocked my family on everything. Phone, email, socials, all of it. I needed peace. But I left the Reddit post up. I didn't edit it. didn't add to it, just left it there like a mirror they could look into if they wanted to. Then they started begging. At first, it was subtle. My dad left a voicemail saying they missed me. My mum wrote a comment under one of the viral videos claiming it was a huge misunderstanding and they never meant to hurt anyone. A few days later, she wrote another comment begging me to take everything down. I didn't reply, not once. I wasn't doing this for attention or pity. I didn't need their guilt or their apologies, especially not the fake one. They started a fire thinking I'd stay quiet and let it burn me down, but I walked through it and came out stronger. A few weeks after everything calmed down online, I finally did what I should have done months ago. I booked that trip to Greece. It was the vacation I had planned before my parents hinted they were struggling and needed help with their anniversary. Back then, I cancelled everything to help them. Now, with the refund money from the venue and vendors, and a little extra from my first sponsor deal, I clicked confirm on a solo trip. Just me. No guilt. Landing in Greece felt like breathing for the first time in years. I didn't have to answer to anyone. I explored old ruins, sat in cafes with my journal, and watched the sun dip into the sea like it was putting on a show just for me. The peace I felt didn't come from the scenery. It came from knowing I had finally chosen myself. One quiet night in a cozy Airbnb, I opened my laptop and started writing. I didn't plan to go viral again. I just wanted to let something out. So I started a blog, a simple one, about money, guilt, and setting boundaries with toxic family. I called it Paid in Full. I shared my story in a softer, more personal way and hit publish. By the next morning, people were already reading it. They didn't just read, they responded. They sent their own stories. Some were heartbreaking, others were eerily similar. Grown adults just like me, who were tired of being used, ignored, or emotionally blackmailed. The messages were raw and real. I wasn't alone anymore, and neither were they. Soon, the blog grew. I started posting regularly. Tips on financial self-respect, red flags in family dynamics, how to say no without guilt. Brands reached out again, this time wanting to be part of the platform. I stayed selective, keeping the blog honest and clean. My voice wasn't just mine anymore. It had become something bigger, something my parents couldn't erase, ignore, or twist. They had tried to keep me small, but here I was, halfway across the world, building something powerful out of the ashes they left behind. And the best part, they couldn't stop it, not this time. After I returned from Greece, my brother sent me a message. He hadn't reached out in ages. His tone was careful, like he was testing the waters. He said our parents were hurting and asked if I'd made my point yet. He talked about how family sticks together, how forgiveness matters, and how I should move on. I replied without hesitation. So did I wrote. You just weren't watching. He didn't respond. Soon after, a letter arrived in the mail. No name, but I knew it was from my mother the moment I saw the handwriting. Tidy and polished, like always. Inside, she never said sorry, not once. She wrote that I had embarrassed them, that I'd aired dirty laundry, and that people from church were asking questions. Her words weren't filled with regret. They were full of shame, not because of what they did, but because the world now knew. She called it an online tantrum, said I needed to grow up. Then, in the same breath, begged me to stop. Not because she missed me, not because she understood, but because she was tired of dealing with the consequences. Her concern was their reputation, not the damage they'd caused. Reading it didn't sting. It didn't surprise me either. It only confirmed what I already knew. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was a pattern. For years I made excuses for them, told myself I was imagining the favoritism, the silence, the way they always made me feel like I was too much or never enough. Now they couldn't hide it. Not from me, not from anyone else. I wrote back just one sentence. I stopped being your daughter the night you introduced me as staff. That was all I needed to say. People like to say that family means everything, that you should forgive and forget, no matter what. But love without respect isn't love. It's control. And I wasn't going back to that. Ever. They made their choices, and I made mine. 1 year later, my life looked completely different. No guilt trips, no awkward silences after giving more than I received. No walking on eggshells around people who only wanted me quiet and small. Just peace. Steady, quiet peace that came from finally choosing myself. To mark the anniversary of the party I paid for but wasn't welcome at, I planned something of my own, a dinner, small, warm, and personal. I didn't need a huge crowd or fancy speeches. I just wanted to be surrounded by people who saw me, really saw me, and valued me for who I was, not what I could give. The restaurant had an outdoor garden with string lights overhead and long wooden tables covered in candles and fresh flowers. Every guest had a handwritten note at their seat, a simple thank you for being part of my story. No photographers, no public announcements, no fake smiles, just real laughter, good food, and quiet joy. I sat at the head of the table. My name was right there on the place card. No one could miss it. For the first time in a long while, I didn't feel like I had to earn my place. I belonged here, not because of what I paid for or what I could do for others, but because of who I was. At one point, I stood and raised my glass. Everyone turned toward me, smiling. I just want to say, I began, thank you for being here, not just tonight, but in my life, when things were heavy, when I was learning how to stand up for myself, when I didn't know if I could. Then I smiled and added, and most of all, I want to thank myself for walking away when it hurt, for staying quiet when I could have screamed, for learning finally that I don't have to prove my worth to anyone. The table clapped. Someone shouted, "To Jenna!" and we all toasted. Later that night, I posted a photo of the evening, just a candlelit table with my name card in focus. The caption read, "They wanted me to serve their party. I built my own, and this time, everyone knows who paid for it." Do you think Jenna made the right choice by cutting her family off and building a life without them? Or should she have given them one more chance to make things right? Let me know what you think in the comments. I'd love to hear your take. And if you're into stories about betrayal, revenge, and reclaiming your power, don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss a new post.